Hello, I am Víctor Paredes. I am the Product Manager of Moho, and I want to show you some of the changes we made to the timeline. So first you can see we have some new icons here on the timeline, and let me show you the first one. So let's say I am animating on frame, I don't know, 72. So I am just creating some keyframes here, modifying, I don't know, the rotation of the share, many things here. But now I am thinking that maybe the pupil is too big in the entire character, so I want to modify that. So in order to do that, I need to go back to frame 0. So now we have this button here, and this button automatically sends me back to frame 0. So here in this frame I can select the pupil. I just click Alt and right click to select the layer of the eye here, and I will make the eye smaller. So let's suppose I want the eye to be like that. So once I am done, I can go back to the bone layer, but now I can click this button again and I will be back on frame 72. And by the way, I broke the animation, but I can do that too. So I can be at any frame and just go back to frame 0 from any frame and then go back to that frame. Okay, so you have this shortcut to just go back to frame 0, which is where you design your character. So if you want to change a color or draw something else in the character or modify a layer, you can just click this button and just go back to the actual frame. So let me just undo that. We also have a shortcut for that, so you can use this button, but you can also use Ctrl+Shift+D. So with that you can go to frame 0 and then go back to the current frame. Alright, now here we have the different modes for the timeline. So we have the channels mode, which is the mode that shows me all the keyframes and all the channels of the animation, okay, which is like the normal mode in Moho. Then you have the sequencer, which shows me all the layers. I can drag right click here and move between those. So you can see I can navigate with right click here. So it shows me all the layers, and I can also modify the timing of those layers, so I can make them appear before or after. Alright, so I will just put them back to their normal position, which is here. And then you have the graph mode, which is this button. And with the graph mode, I can simply select any bone with the select bone tool. I will just select the head here, and then it will show me all the channels that are moving the head. And if I want to see any specific channel, for instance, if I want to see the position, I just double click on the position, and here you can see the keyframes of the position. If I want to see the rotation, I can just double click the rotation, and here you have the keyframes of the rotation. So I can modify these keyframes in the graph mode, or I can double click and add new keyframes and modify those too. So you can modify the graph here, and you can change the interpolation. So maybe I want the interpolation here to be Bezier, so I can modify the handles now and have more control over the animation here. Right, now I want to show you the improvements to the onion skins, but I want to show them to you with this character. This is a frame by frame animation here. So you can see the keyframes, and you can see this character moving here. Alright, so if I activate the onion skins here, I can create new onion skins by simply clicking on this part of the timeline. So I can add many different onion skins, and then if I move the cursor, you can see that the onion skins are also moving with the character. Alright, so we have several options here. I can open the onion skins here, and here I have selected outlines only. So this will show me like simplified versions of the vectors here, but I can uncheck that, and I can actually see the lines with their strokes here. Okay, I have colored fields, so I can click it on or off, and the onion skins are going to be colored. Okay, let me just set outlines only again. I have relative frames. That means that if I move the cursor, the onion skins are also going to move, but if I uncheck this, the onion skins are going to stay in that place even if I move the animation. So this is good, for instance, if you want to have a reference pose. So let's suppose this is my reference pose, and I want to continue drawing later, but I want to continue seeing that pose. You can do that. Right? then we have options. Actually, let me activate more onion skins here to show you the new options. So I will select relative frames again, and now we can also change the color of the onion skins. So maybe for the past I want them to be some kind of blue, and for the future I want them to be some kind of green. So now the past is blue and the future is green on the onion skins. Alright, now I want to show you another file to show you the next button. So this is a scene from Wall Polkers, and here are several characters moving, but I want to show you these characters here. And if I open I just Alt and right click over the layer to select it. So if I hold Alt on the keyboard and I click over any layer, I can select it directly. So here I have this layer, and you can see this woman is talking. Alright, so what I can do now is that if I click on this button, this is relative keyframing. So this means that all the keyframes, if I select all the keyframes or all the keyframes I have selected, they are going to change with whatever I do here. So for instance, let's say this character is too sad, so I just select all the keyframes here and I will just move it to make her happier. So now the entire animation will work happier, okay, because I'm editing it in a relative way. So I actually moved all the keyframes all together. Now you can see that the O's are not working very well when they are happy, but I marked for this animation, I put the green label to all the O's. So what I'm going to do is to select all the keyframes that are green, and now I will fix this. So maybe I want the O to be something like this. Alright, so now I fix all the O's with the relative keyframing. Okay, and if I want to deactivate that, I can click here, and now you can see the timeline is gray again. So that means relative keyframing is not working anymore. Alright, now let me just go back to the fish, which is here. Because I want to show you these buttons here. I won't show you this one yet, I will show you the next one. So this button here freezes the visible points or the visible bones depending on the layer you have selected. So in this case I have a bone layer, so let's say I click this button here, and that will automatically add keyframes for all the bones on this layer. Okay, so I can freeze that pose, and that means I'm protecting that pose because it has keyframes now, and now I can continue animating. Okay, now we have another option here, so let me just go to another frame. So for instance here we have another option which is reset the points or the bones. In this case it's going to reset the bones. So that means that if I click this, it is going to go back to the original pose it had on frame 0. So you can see on frame 0 this character was like that. So now that is what is happening when I press that button. I don't remember in what frame, but I press it somewhere. I think it's here. Alright, and then finally we have the auto keyframe, the auto freeze case, which is this one. So when this is activated, even if I move only one bone, all the bones will get keyframes. Okay, so that helps me to define the full pose of the character. So maybe, I don't know, for some reason I want the character to look like this, and let me just move the newspaper, I think, like that, and maybe the leg is going to be up. So let's say I really like this pose, so I want to hold all the bones. I want all the bones to have keyframes there to be sure they are not changing position later. So I just activate the auto keyframe and the auto freeze pose, and that will happen. Okay, it is important to remember to deactivate it, because otherwise you will be adding a lot of keyframes even if you don't want to. Alright, now we have some other options here. So normally if no keyframe is selected, so you can see I have no keyframe selected here, I have the interpolation. So let's say I will set it to easy in out. Okay, and that means that every new keyframe I create will have that interpolation. So you can see the icon here, the keyframe itself, it is easy in and out. So every new keyframe I create will have that interpolation. And I can also set a default interval, so the animation can move on ones, twos, threes, or any number really. So let me just define it to choose here. So now every keyframe I create will actually move on twos. So now the body there is moving on twos. Alright, and one difference with version 13.5 is that now if I select keyframes, you can see the text is red now, and that means that I am actually editing these keyframes. So these keyframes are smooth and with an interval of 1, so I can change those to, I don't know, being linear and with an interval of 4. So now they will be linear but move every 4 frames. So you can do that, and if I unselect those, I can change the default interpolation here. Alright, now we have the keyframe window here, the keyframe details. So if I click this, it will automatically open the keyframe window. So here I have more options for the keyframes. So the whole duration, if I want to create a cycle, stagger it, I have more options here for the selected keyframes. So I can open that too, and I can simply close it by clicking on this button. Now in this case I have the keyframe window docked to my timeline, but if you want to have it floating, you can go to Window, Docking, and select keyframe here. So now this window is floating, so you can put it wherever you want, and I can make it appear or disappear with this button. Alright, now the next section of the timeline is the push frames. Okay, so this is very nice to retime your animation, and it works over all the layers that you have selected. So if you want to edit more than one layer, you can select more than one layer here. Alright, so the way it works is that I go to any frame. So let's say I will set this keyframe to go on once. So this movement is happening here, but maybe I want it a bit longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this frame and I'm going to push the keyframes to the right. So here I can define the amount of frames I want to push. So let's say I want to push it 8 frames, and now I just click this and that will push these 8 frames, and if I click it again, it's another 8 frames. So now this movement is way longer, and I can go back too. So I can just click here and push them back 8 frames. So I can define the number here. Normally I just use 1 here, so I can push everything 1, and you can push it until the keyframes they hit with another keyframe, so then you cannot push it anymore. Alright, so this is very useful for retiming the animation, especially also if you are animating frame by frame. This also works with the frame by frame layer, so I can hold one frame longer than the other just by doing that. So I'm retiming the entire animation here. Alright, so let me just go back to the fish file, and here we have the markers. So this icon, it adds a marker. So here you can add a marker, you can add a text if you want. So I will just write hello here, and the marker can be document wide or only related to the selected layer. So if I make it document wide, that means that the marker is here, so you can put it wherever you want. And if I select any other layer, the marker is still there, okay, because it's universal to the entire document. Now if I create a normal marker, so I will call this by, okay, this normal marker, it's only in the selected layer. So if I select another layer, you can see there is no marker. Alright, and then if you have some markers but you don't want to see them anymore, we have this button here that hides the markers. So they still exist, but you are just hiding them in the timeline because maybe they are bothering you at this point because you want to animate something else, so you can just hide the markers there. And we have something similar for the timeline, actually, sorry, for the camera. So if I animate the camera, let's say I want to move the camera here, and then I want to move it here, and then I want to zoom in into the eye of the character. So I'm just moving the camera here. So I have this camera movement happening, and I have the keyframes of the camera. And the keyframes of the camera, they are always visible. It doesn't matter what layer you have selected, the keyframes of the camera are always there. So sometimes you can select them without noticing it. So it can be dangerous that you are editing your animation, but maybe you are moving the camera and you didn't realize that happened. So we have a new button here to hide the camera keyframe. So now the camera is still working, but you are not seeing the keyframes. So you can edit everything without having to worry about breaking the camera animation. So I can hide both the markers and the camera. Okay, and now finally about these buttons, I was just missing this one. We have the consolidate channels of the layer. So if I click this, all the channels are going to be consolidated into one channel. All right, and this is especially useful if you are editing a long animation and you have many keyframes and many channels. You can just consolidate everything, so you are only seeing one channel here. Another thing that is useful is that if you have more than one character, or you have several layers selected, so let's say I will just duplicate this character a couple times, and now I will select these 3 layers. So now you can see all the 3 layers in the timeline. I just selected them with holding shift and clicking over the layers here. So you can see all the layers here, but if you want to quickly retime all these 3 layers, you can just consolidate the channels and now apply. For instance, you can push one keyframe here. This is a bit heavy, so it will take a while, but then I just push that, so you can edit also all the keyframes at the same time. And then you can unconsolidate it, and then you can go back to your original layer and just continue working with that. All right. There is another option. I will use this file again. And that option is that now you can flip the canvas. So let me just show you the full canvas here. And if I click on this button here, I can flip the canvas, so I can check if my pose is working well, or let's say I want to draw a curve, but it's more comfortable to me to draw it in the other direction, so I can just flip the canvas there. And we have also a shortcut for that, is Shift F. So with Shift F you can shift the canvas, and the other nice thing is that it shifts the canvas considering whatever is at the center of the screen. So then here, if I put the head at the center of the screen, it's going to flip the canvas like that. If I put the hand here, it's going to flip the canvas considering that. Or even if I have everything rotated, so I will just put this here and flip the canvas, it will respect that rotation too. So I can just flip there. Alright, and now if I want to reset everything, I can press home, and now I have my real view of the scene. Alright, and now there is an extra thing I want to show you, and is that actually let me just go back to the fish, not to this one but to the fish here, and let me revert the fish because I made too many changes here, so I just want to go back to the original fish animation. Okay, so something that you can do now is that we have shortcuts to navigate between keyframes. So in the past you could navigate between frames if you press the arrows on the keyboard. So if you press right or left, you can navigate between the frames, but now you can also navigate between the keyframes, and to do that you simply press Alt and X to go to the next keyframe, or Alt and Z to go to the previous one. So you can navigate between different keyframes by just doing that. Okay, and we have other shortcuts, and for showing these shortcuts I will show you the frame by frame animation. So let's say you mark your important poses. So let's say this pose is important, so I will right click it and put a green label here. So this keyframe is going to be green, and then maybe this pose is also important, so I will mark this also as green. And let's say this one is also important, so I will also mark it as green. I'm using green, but it can be any color. Okay, but I have these 3 keyframes green. So again, with Alt X and Alt Z, I can move between normal keyframes, but if I press Alt W or Alt Q, I can navigate between the marked keyframes. So I am navigating here between the green keyframes. So if you have keyframes for your frame by frame animation, you can mark them and just navigate between them very quickly. Okay, so it's Alt Q to go back and Alt W to go to the next one. So, and I think that's it. There are many little changes in the timeline. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit too long to talk about the timeline, but there are too many things there. So sorry about that. Thank you for watching. Bye.